And Mindy, will it just be like us, our cameras, the ones being shown, not the attendees will be kind of on listen only mode?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Mindy, just let me know when we're good to go.
Can do.
Also, Sarah, if you catch me just like spinning in my chair, like Danny, you're doing it again. Stop spinning in your chair.
Well, it's 11 o'clock, so if you guys are ready, we can go ahead and get started.
All righty. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our Health and Wealth webinar. The SBDC for Southwest Kansas has graciously been asked to co-sponsor with CBIZ. We have two representatives from CBIZ in Kansas City, and it is Danny Ritz. He operates on the benefits side of the house, and Sarah Cathy, who is on the retirement services. Today, they're going to be sharing their knowledge in the small business arena when it comes to those two areas. And I'm going to hand it over to Danny and let him introduce himself and his team.
Perfect. Thank you, Maria. As Maria said, my name is Danny Ritz. I'm an employee benefits consultant at CBIZ. And what Sarah and I are going to talk to you today about is really best practices and trends and things that we constantly get asked about when it comes to employee benefits and retirement when it comes to small businesses. So this idea kind of came about because Maria, who is the SBDC representative in Southwestern Kansas, she had sent me a few small business owners to just have a conversation with me, to talk about employee benefits, to chat about what small businesses can expect when it comes to health insurance and other things like that, and how they can best provide that for their employees. So I met with a couple of the companies Maria sent my way and just kind of answered the same questions, right? Small business owners have similar concerns. While each business is unique and faces its own challenges, when it comes to health insurance and other benefits like retirement, small businesses face a lot of the same challenges. So I had kind of the same conversation a couple different times. So I asked Maria if she thought it'd be a good idea to invite SBDC to a webinar where we can talk to a bunch of different business owners about the trends and the challenges and best practices when it comes to health insurance, retirement, and other employee benefits. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to share my screen here. And you let me know, Sarah, you let me know if that's working.
Yep, it's perfect.
All right, great. Well, again, this is presentation co-sponsored by the SBDC of Kansas, Small Business Association, and CBIZ. So we appreciate you all being here. And again, we're going to walk through kind of employee benefits first. So what we consider employee benefits is health insurance, dental, vision, life, other lines of coverage that you offer to your employees. We're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on that. We're going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes on retirement, and that's when Sarah Cathy is going to take it away. And then we're going to open it up for some questions. So if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat as we go through, or write them down and we'll be able to ask them at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Danny Ritz, an employee benefits consultant. I've been with CBIZ for about 4 years now, and I work primarily with small businesses. What we consider small businesses at CBIZ are companies with less than 100 employees. That's kind of how we break it out, but we understand that a lot of times companies with 500 employees, 1,000 employees also consider themselves small businesses. So we work with all of them, but we're really going to be focused on groups that have less than 200 employees today. Sarah?
Thanks, Danny. My name is Sarah Cathy, obviously also with CBIZ. I've been with CBIZ for just shy of 12 years now, strictly in the Retirement Plan Services division. So what we do in the Retirement Plan Services group here at CBIZ is we do investment advisory work on group sponsored retirement plans, as well as the annual administration. We have an actuarial team. So pretty much anything that needs assistance as it relates to an employer-sponsored retirement plan, either a defined contribution plan, which is similar to a 401k or a 403b, or a defined benefit plan, which is a pension plan. We can do the actuarial and the investment work on that too. So I focus mainly on the defined contribution side, so 401ks and 403bs. We educate participants, we answer a lot of questions. Just like Danny mentioned, we see a lot of small businesses that, there are some barriers to entry, especially as it relates to retirement plans. Some of them can be quite expensive. I think there's a concern that they are kind of administratively burdensome sometimes. So after Danny talks, I'm going to kind of go through the options that you have as a small business to have a retirement plan, kind of some pros and cons of each one. I can even give you a general idea of general costs to set one up. Then also, the many benefits to offering a plan to your employees, but also to yourself as a small business owner. So I'll let Danny kind of start us off, but I look forward to speaking and kind of bringing up the rear end.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so a little bit about CBIZ before we get started. Quickly, CBIZ, we are a company, a publicly traded company. We have about 5,000 employees across the country. What's really unique about CBIZ is that we are really kind of two companies in one. Half of CBIZ is a full-fledged accounting firm that does tax returns, audits, anything a tax firm would do. That is one half. The other half is benefits and insurance. And under that benefits and insurance falls employee benefits, falls payroll, HR help, property casualty. So that's liability and workers' comp types of lines of coverage, retirement, and talent and compensation solutions. So when it comes to CBIZ, the important thing to understand is that we really only work with employer-sponsored plans. So what we're talking about today, both Sarah and I, and she mentioned it, but we're talking about employer-sponsored plans. So company plans that we work with. While there are some sections of CBIZ that work with individuals on individual tax returns and individual life insurance solutions, our focus and our expertise is on how can we help employers and how can we help employers really attract and retain talented employees. And that's really what employee benefits are used for. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. Again, our agenda, we're talking benefits first, some trends, cost containment strategies and solutions, and switching over to the 401k challenges and considerations there. And then we'll wrap it up with some questions and answers. So when it comes to health insurance, and that's what we're going to spend a majority of the time on, it can be a challenge for small businesses. There are oftentimes a lot of different carriers to choose from, but carriers offering quotes is not an effective way to combat the rising cost of healthcare. What we are challenged with every time I meet with a client or an employer is, what can we do about the rising cost of healthcare? Switching carriers every single year is one option that you have. You go to market, you ask carriers for new rates, and then you switch to the carrier with the lowest rate. That is one option. However, that's a highly disruptive option that your employees probably won't be too happy with. So what we're going to talk about today is some other trends and some other ways to combat the rising cost of healthcare without having to switch carriers every single year. One of those ways is through alternate funding arrangements. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different ways we can fund a plan and the advantages of that. A big way to help combat the rising cost of healthcare is through contribution strategies and plan design changes. These two options really put more responsibility on your employees to make smarter decisions when it comes to how they receive their healthcare. Other ways are some non-traditional solutions, such as getting rid of insurance networks altogether and doing what we call reference-based pricing. That those are more radical solutions, but definitely options if we really need to combat or really need to lower costs. And then the other two major ways of doing it is employee engagement enhancements. And we do this through communication and developing a robust communication strategy and compliance. The last thing you want is to get hit with a fine from the IRS. That certainly doesn't help your overall healthcare costs if you are found out of compliance and you owe the IRS money. That's just another added fee. So staying in compliance is a great way to combat the rising cost of healthcare. Again, our first topic that we're going to talk about, we've already discussed carrier options and how switching carrier to carrier can save you money, but ultimately it's not a long-term solution. What are some alternate funding arrangements? So a lot of times with small businesses, you feel like you only have one option, and that option is what we call fully insured. Fully insured is the least risky option when it comes to health insurance. You pay a monthly premium every single month. Every single month you pay a premium, it goes out the door, the insurance company collects that premium, and then the insurance company pays the claims that your employees face. That's called fully insured. It is the lowest on the risk scale when it comes to funding your health insurance plan. There are some other options. The goal of any healthcare strategy should be to lower the amount of fixed costs, so costs that are just going out the door. Those are fixed costs. You can't do anything about that. Let's lower the portion of the pie that is a fixed cost, and let's increase the portion of the pie that is a variable cost. And you do that through different funding options and increasing your risk and moving up this ladder. So a self-funded hybrid option, we often refer to these as level funded plans. Level funded plans are great options for companies with 5 to 50 employees. If you have 5 to 50 employees and you're on this call, you should definitely be talking to carriers, talking to your consultants, talking to brokers about level funded options that are available to you. What this does, it's a self-funded hybrid model where you get a little more information about the money that is actually being spent. So as opposed to a fully insured plan where you pay a monthly premium every single month, the insurance carrier pays that, and you don't really see how much of that premium was spent on claims. You don't really see how much of that premium was used up after a full year. Hybrid level funded plans, you do get some of that transparency and some of that data. So what a carrier does in a level funded plan, let's use United Healthcare, for example. They're the largest carrier in the country, so I might use them for an example multiple times, but let's use United Healthcare for an example. United Healthcare will look at your company, it'll look at the employees that you have, and it will say, this is what we think these employees will spend on health insurance. This is what we think, to our best judgment, the amount of money spent in claims will be on this group. They will offer you rates based off of that. You will pay a monthly premium based off of that. But at the end of the year, after a full calendar year, United Healthcare will give you a report that says, hey, here's how much you paid into the pool. Here's how much you paid in premium. Here was the amount of claims that your employees received. Here's the treatments they received. Here's the claims that were incurred. If there's a difference there, you get some of that money back. And so that is a way to control some of those variable costs and lower the cost of healthcare. And your risk is capped, so you're not on the hook for any money that you go over, but you'll probably face a high renewal the next year. But again, you get to see the claims data, and you get to see all that information come in, and you have an option to get some money back if your claims were less than the premiums that you paid into it. Think of it as like one of those safe driving apps for car insurance, right? If you are proven to be a low risk group, then the insurance carrier will give you money back at the end of the year. A captive, as we move up the risk ladder here, a captive is a way of pooling with other companies to go into a completely self-funded model. This works for companies between 75 and 300 employees. So if you're between 75 and 300 employees and you have a good health history, and you have you check some other boxes that an employee benefits consultant would walk through with you, then a captive could be a great solution for saving money and again, reducing the amount of fixed costs, increasing the amount of variable costs that you can control. And then going completely self-funded, we start to look at going self-funded for groups with really 150, 200, 300 employees or more is when we start looking at self-funded options. This is exactly what it sounds like. You become the insurance carrier. You pay for the claims as they're incurred on a weekly basis. So when your employees go to the doctor and receive treatment, the company just pays for those claims. They don't pay the insurance company. They don't pay premium to the insurance company. They fund it themselves. And that is the ultimate reducing the amount of fixed costs and increasing the amount of variable costs. But it also comes with the highest amount of risk. When going self-funded, you want to make sure you think about the options that, or some of the consequences or considerations of doing that. There are more reporting requirements when it comes to self-funded. Even if you are under 50 employees, you still have to do 1094 and 1095B reporting, which is usually only required for companies with more than 50 employees. But if you're under 50 and you're level funded, then you would have to do that. It does require a little bit more plan administration. So it's important that you have some help in the office, maybe someone who does office management work or a little bit of HR work. It's important to have someone there to help because it is a little more administratively burdened to do a level funded plan. But again, the savings can be there. You have to make sure you look through the plan document and all the covered services match up with what you expect them to be. Claims reporting can be a little scary. You get to see behind the curtain. You get to look at the claims that are incurred on your group. Some people don't like that. Some people don't want to see what prescriptions are being taken. Some people don't want to see the procedures that are being done. And so that transparency can be a little confusing. You do need some help from HR professionals to make sure that's all done correctly. And then renewals can be a little tricky sometimes, but at least you'll have some information to go into renewal season, knowing exactly what your loss ratio is. So you'll be able to negotiate with carriers because you'll know how much of your premium was spent on claims and how much it wasn't. So renewals can be negotiated a little bit easier the more you move up that risk pool. One of the things we talked about is as a way to help reduce cost and increase employee engagement is communication. So you can come up with the best ideas possible, but if they aren't communicated with your employees properly, then you run into you can run into some issues and your plan won't work. For example, let's say you come up with this great plan for moving people to a high deductible health plan or educating people on what accident insurance is and how accident insurance can help you with your high deductible. If those strategies aren't communicated to your employees, then they're not going to work properly. So one of the ways you do this is through an online enrollment solution. So for small businesses, finding an online enrollment solution can be challenging, it can be difficult, but there are options out there. When an employee engages in online enrollment solutions, they tend to value their benefits a little bit more. It looks more professional. We have case studies that we've done where we've worked with an employer and the employer really didn't have the budget to increase the benefits that they were offering. They didn't have the budget to contribute more to health insurance or contribute more to dental insurance or whatever it is. But they moved from paper enrollments to an online enrollment solution. When they did that, they surveyed employees beforehand. So they surveyed employees the year before on how they felt about their benefits. Then they went through open enrollment and an online solution, and they surveyed employees after that. Without increasing, without adding benefits, without increasing their contribution strategy, employees had a more positive view of their benefits and valued their benefits more. That's simply from moving from paper enrollments to an online solution. It didn't cost the employer any more money, but the employees engaged more with their benefits. They understood their benefits more, and they had a better experience enrolling in their benefits. And so therefore they valued them more. And so that's a great way for companies to communicate and to get more value out of their benefits without increasing their costs. So next, we're going to talk about contribution strategies and some plan design changes. So one way to help combat the rising costs of healthcare is to shift your contribution strategy. As we can see here, if we're benchmarking contribution strategy, you can kind of look at this and see where do you fit in this in these graphs. So the first graph on the left talks about how much premium is paid by the employee, broken out by small firms, large firms, and then all firms. As you can see, if you're a smaller company, you are contributing more to that individual only premium amount. And the individual is paying about 16% on average, and employers are paying the other 84% on average. But when it comes to smaller firms are paying much less of that family coverage and that family tier. And that's at a level of 40% paid by the employee and family and 60% from the employer. If you're a larger firm, you may pay less of the single individual only coverage, but on average, you're paying more of the family coverage. And then all firms, you can see that number right there. Another thing to consider is what benefits you're contributing to as an employer. What benefits are you paying a portion of the premium, and what benefits are you having be voluntary, meaning the employee is paying the entire premium. So as you can see, dental is one of those benefits where the majority of employers are contributing to the cost of dental insurance in some form. 73% are contributing some form of money towards their dental premiums. But when it comes to vision, the majority of employers are not. The majority of employers are making vision a completely voluntary benefit. And this trend has really increased over the last 4 to 5 years. So if you're an employer who is struggling to meet the budgetary requirements of benefits, consider making vision a voluntary product if it's not one already, because that's what the majority of employers are doing. And it's definitely a way to shift money elsewhere, away from vision and towards medical and dental, which are more valued. Okay, we're going to jump back to employee communication trends. As you can see here, 93% of workers keep the same benefits as the previous year, and more than 50% of employees spend less than half an hour researching their options during open enrollment. This is kind of like the incumbent always wins. The incumbent always wins when it comes to political races and other things like that. And the incumbent wins when it comes to your the benefits you choose every single year. But every year, your lifestyle might change, your needs may change, and employees should be spending more than a half an hour looking over their options. And so you do that through a year-long communication strategy. So let's not just engage with employees at open enrollment time. Let's make sure we're engaging with employees. We're sending them benefit information throughout the year so they're not just blitzed with all of the benefit information at one time. And so you can do this through setting up a communication calendar where you have emails planned out throughout the entire year to touch on different things, to touch on the importance of voluntary benefits like accident and critical illness, to touch on what dental insurance means, to touch on what an HSA is, to touch on high deductible health plans, other things so that they can educate themselves throughout the year. And it's not just open enrollment, you're blitzed with all this information at once. Also consider different forms of communication. Text messages are opened at 8 times greater rate than emails. And so think about texting your employees about health insurance, sending them information through a text service about benefits or about open enrollment coming up. Those are effective ways to communicate with your employees. Also, a great thing to do is choose different means of communication. So other communication recommendations from us is, collect employee data, survey your employees, ask them what they value. If you're spending money on these benefits and you survey your employees, it turns out your employees don't value dental insurance or they don't value vision, then you can make those voluntary, but you can't know that until you survey them. So survey your employees, utilize short, concise messaging, again, text messages, shorter emails that can link out to other ways to explain the benefits. Incorporate different channels, send videos. We work with employers who, in their benefit guide, what they'll do is they'll have an employee testimony about a certain benefit. So let's say it's, again, I'm using voluntary benefits as an example, but if it's accident insurance, have one of your employees who's used accident insurance explain how they used it. So we had an employee who broke a finger, filed a claim with their accident insurance, and got $600 from their coverage to pay for some of those medical bills. And we made a simple 30-second video that said, hey, this is what I did. I'm an employee. You guys all know me. You see me around the office. That's a great way to communicate with your employees. And then develop, again, communication throughout the year, set goals for how you want your communication to, what the results you want to be, and track your progress. So again, we talked about compliance and how staying in compliance can help save money because you're not penalized by the IRS. This is a handy dandy chart that we use as employers grow, what compliance and what acts and laws they're responsible for. So this will be sent out. I'm not going to read through each one of these and whatnot because we'll be sending this presentation out afterwards. But these are some compliance considerations as you grow as an employer. So again, just a nice clean chart to make sure that you're in compliance and you won't be fined by the IRS. So with that, I'm wrapping up there. Again, our main themes to consider, alternate funding arrangements. How can we utilize level funded plans? If we're large enough, how can we utilize self-funding? Let's get educated on those and see how they can work for us, see how they can work for you. Mess with look at the contribution strategy. Are there benefits that you're paying for that could be voluntary? And where do you fit there? And then make sure you're communicating effectively with your employees. We want to educate our employees and make them smarter consumers of healthcare. And we do that through an effective communication strategy. Finally, compliance. Let's not get fined by the IRS, and let's make sure that that we're staying in line there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Cathy. Again, send me any questions that you have, and we can answer those after Sarah's presentation. Sarah.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm going to go through 3 good retirement plan solutions for small businesses. First, I want to discuss why it's important to have a retirement plan for any size of employer. And yeah, while it may seem obvious, we hear all the time in the news how the Social Security Trust Fund is not going to have enough money to pay everyone what they're owed when they get to retirement age. Really the issue, a lot of it is misinformation, a lack of education. Social Security was set up decades ago with the intent of supplementing your retirement income. So it was never intended to fully replace your income in your working years while you're in retirement. And I think the message got a little lost over the years, because you wouldn't believe how many participants I work with that just kind of expected to have Social Security in retirement as their only source of income. The other issue is when Social Security was set up, many employers had pension plans or defined benefit plans. And a defined benefit plan is just basically what it sounds like. You're kind of promised this amount of money in retirement, and then it's up to the company to make that promise. And so many, the people, our grandparents' age now, the people that are in retirement homes now, so many of them had pension plans that they could rely on. The generation under them, so the baby boomers now who are just now hitting retirement age, their parents often had these pension plans and knew that they would also have Social Security. And so they didn't do the best job of educating that baby boomer generation of what retirement is going to look like for them. And a lot of baby boomers maybe started with a pension plan, but didn't end up with a pension plan. And they're kind of scrambling for what retirement is going to look like for them. And so we're going to talk about a few simple ways to help yourself and your employees, why it's important to do that. Social Security was never really intended to supplement more than 40% of your income. And that's at the very most. So everything else is really on you as an individual. As a small business owner, as a business owner, period, you do not have a requirement to offer a retirement plan. So unlike what Danny was talking about, where there are some requirements to provide insurance to your employees, you really don't have a requirement to provide a retirement plan to your employees. However, it's extremely important, not only for you, just as an American working individual, but also to set your employees up for retirement. There are so many statistics that we could go into on why it's important, but really, just like on Danny's side, you don't want an 80-year-old operating a forklift driver. That's going to cause your health insurance rates to go up. It's important that we kind of gently usher these people out the door. And in doing so, they need to have a way to afford retirement. So I'm going to go through a few options, and then if you have any questions, certainly let me know. One of the simplest solutions, and it's called a simple IRA for a reason, is a simple IRA. It was intended for companies under 100 employees, and it's very easy to set up. There's no annual administration. There's no plan testing, which I'll kind of explain what plan testing looks like when we get to 401k plans. There's no IRS reporting. There's not a lot of Department of Labor oversight. I think you can set one up in about 15 minutes online through any mutual fund company, through Charles Schwab. And it doesn't get a lot of notice these days. And I'm not really sure why, because oftentimes when I get questions from small businesses about retirement plans, the first thing I tell them is, I think you should strongly consider a simple IRA. Now, it's not without its disadvantages, but it is very easy. And for me, I think it's a good kind of segue, because the hardest thing when you set up a new plan is you have no idea what your cash flow is going to look like. You don't know what participant is going to find this plan of value. You don't know as an employer what your budget looks like as far as making an employer contribution. So there are just a lot of unknowns in setting up a retirement plan. A simple IRA, it doesn't really matter if you don't know that stuff. If no one joins the plan, you're not really out a ton of money. If you as the small business owner are the only person that joins the plan, you're not going to fail testing. So it's a really simple solution that you can set up, and it offers a lot of advantages. Danny, will you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So eligibility, the most restrictive you can be is any employee making at least $5,000 in the last 2 of 3 years, but you can open it up to much sooner than that. That's just kind of the most restrictive. An individual can defer up to $13,500 in 2021, which is significantly more than a traditional IRA. So just an IRA that you contribute to on your own through your financial advisor, you're limited to $6,000. This limit is $13,500, which is more than double that. So it really gives a good amount that employees can defer if they choose to. There isn't a required employer contribution, and it is a match of up to 3%. So it's 100% up to 3% that you would have to do for any employee that chooses to contribute to the plan. It's fully vested, so if the employee leaves, they take that money with them. You can also choose to do a non-elective contribution of 2%. And what that means is, it doesn't matter if the employee contributes, you'll just put 2% in for all employees. So you do have a choice there, but other than that, you can't get too creative with your employer contribution. There is no profit sharing contribution. It's pretty much this stated match. And then you can choose, back in the day when people created simple IRAs, they would tell your employees, just go wherever you want, set up your own simple IRA, and then we'll send the money to it. So some employers, their employees had money at Vanguard and American Funds and Schwab and all these different places. And it is the employer's responsibility to remit those contributions, to send that money to those individual companies. So it got a little administratively burdensome. So what I strongly recommend is you choose a provider, and you tell employees, here's your provider, you can go online and set this up. And that way, every pay period, when you go to submit the contributions, it's very simple for you as an administrator. But really, once you set the plan up, your only ongoing administrative duty is just making sure every pay period to submit the employee contribution and the employer contribution. Outside of that, there's no annual testing or anything like that. You mind, Danny, going to the next one? Disadvantage, I kind of mentioned this, there's really no flexibility on employer contributions. So you have to do what I mentioned in the previous slide. You can't do any year-end profit sharing contributions. If you have kind of a banner year and you want to put extra money into the retirement plan, you really don't have an option in a simple IRA. There potentially could be limited fund choices, although we're not seeing that as much anymore. There are really several options. To me, the biggest disadvantage of a simple IRA is, for some reason right now, Roth contributions are not allowed in simple IRAs. What a Roth contribution is, and it came out around 2005, but it's still a very unknown contribution source in retirement plans. Your typical retirement plan, you make a pre-tax contribution. So you make a contribution before you pay ordinary income taxes on that contribution. It goes into the plan pre-tax. It grows tax deferred. And then in retirement, when you go to take that money out, you pay taxes on your contributions plus any earnings that those contributions have made over the lifetime of the plan. The government set it up this way so that in theory, you should be in a lower tax bracket in your non-working years in retirement than you are during your working years. So you may as well defer your taxes until retirement. That really is no longer a guarantee. We aren't seeing too many people that have a significant decrease in their tax rate as they enter retirement. So newish, about 15 years ago, they created what's called a Roth or after-tax deferral source. And that means that your contribution goes in after you pay your ordinary income taxes. So you're not paying extra taxes. It's just not a pre-tax contribution. And then what happens is that money grows tax-free because you've already paid taxes on it. So your contributions plus any earnings grow tax-free. And when you take a distribution in retirement, you actually don't pay any taxes on both your contribution or the earnings on those contributions. So for me, Roth is honestly the most significant benefit to a retirement plan these days. It's not for everyone. There are a lot of considerations that you need to make when you decide whether or not it makes sense for you. But if you take an individual like Danny, Danny's got a lot of working years ahead of him before he retires. So for him right now, it makes a lot of sense to make a Roth contribution, maybe not necessarily the full contribution. Still, he could do some pre-tax because you can do a combination of the two, but know that that bucket, that Roth bucket will grow tax-free. And then in retirement, he will be able to access that without paying any taxes. So your employer contribution is always pre-tax. So it really doesn't matter to you how the employee contributes, whether they contribute Roth or after tax or Roth or pre-tax, but because what you contribute is always pre-tax. And I really dove into Roth, but it is not available in simple IRAs. It's only a pre-tax contribution. So to me, that is a disadvantage of a simple IRA, is that you just don't have the option. I will just make one more note on Roth. Roth is allowed in a 401k plan. And for right now, and it may change with some new legislation coming up, but for right now, there aren't any income limits. So if you wanted to set up a Roth IRA outside of your employer-sponsored plan, you would be limited to what you could contribute based on income limits. However, inside of a 401k plans, there are no income limits that are applicable. So we see some of our most highly compensated individuals, business owners, deferring Roth into their 401k plan because it's really their only option as far as an after-tax way to save for retirement. You also can't take a loan in a simple IRA, which can potentially be a negative. There isn't a vesting schedule, so there isn't really kind of a carrot to keep employees there. However, just having a retirement plan is, it to me is the carrot, just offering them something, some way to save for retirement. And then you will have some rollover restrictions if you want to move the money before 2 years of your first contribution. So it's not hugely significant, but it is something. Okay, now we're going to talk about 401k. It's extremely flexible. So you can do an employer contribution, but you don't have to. With a simple IRA, you have to do an employer contribution. In a 401k plan, you could just have employee deferral only, where the employee contributes, they can do the IRS max, but you don't put in an employer contribution. You can do a discretionary match. You can come up with a match formula. I can tell you, we have seen a match formula, any match formula you can think of. You can do a straight dollar amount, 100% up to the first $1,000. So worst case scenario, you have 10 employees, you're gonna be out $10,000, worst case. Or you could do, like our CBIZ one is 50% up to 6%. So if I, as an employee, contribute 6%, CBIZ puts in 3% of my compensation. So there are so many different, you can change it every year. So you can start with one thing, and then if you think something else would be more beneficial. To me, I think a good employer contribution kind of forces the employee, one, to contribute to the plan. I'm not a huge advocate of non-elective where you just put money in regardless of whether or not the employee is contributing, but two, kind of stretches the employees to contribute more themselves, have a little skin in the game. So I really like our 50% up to 6%, because then 9% of their compensation is going into the plan annually, which is really significant. And it kind of puts the onus on both the employer and the employee. I'm not going to get into testing in too great of detail, but I mentioned it at the beginning. There are some barriers to entry with a 401k plan, and the biggest one is testing. For small businesses, if it's just you and a handful of employees and you want to put away as much as you can, but you're not sure based on the employee's wages, if they're going to contribute much, there are going to be some issues you have with testing annually. One of the things you can do is become a safe harbor plan, and that is similar to a simple IRA in that it is a stated employer contribution. In a 401k plan, it's 100% up to 4%, and that money is fully vested. So you can structure a plan so that you can avoid testing, similar to a simple IRA. But that is one of the negatives to a 401k plan for small businesses, is that you're going to run into some testing issues with the owner versus the other employees. The one thing that's really beneficial, you can do a year-end profit sharing, so you can have disparity. So when you do a match, it's stated it's for all employees. You can't say, okay, my favorite employees get, up to 10% of a contribution and my least favorite employees get something else. That's not what you can do. However, at the end of the year, if you have 30 grand that you don't want to pay in taxes that you weren't kind of budgeting for, you could put that into the 401k plan, and you can actually have disparity in a profit sharing contribution at the end of the year, which means that you can group your employees. So you can say, okay, owners, I want to get the most out of that 30 grand, and then management, and then everyone else. And you can kind of weight it differently, which is an option you don't have in your match, in your regular employer contribution. It also doesn't technically have to be a profit. It's just kind of called that. Sorry, Danny, go ahead. Oh, safe harbor. I kind of talked about this, but it does allow you to fully pass your testing. The annual contribution limit is $19,500 for 2021. So there is a greater contribution limit in a 401k plan than a simple IRA. It's not too significant, but both allow you to put away more than just an IRA that you set up with at your local bank. You can continue, Danny. Eligibility requirements, the kind of worst case scenario is that you have to allow employees to be there for a year and work 1,000 hours, but you could do anything else. You don't have to have any, you can just say they're immediately eligible. And I already touched on this, but pre-tax or Roth or both in a 401k plan is a really significant benefit. Advantages of 401k plan, we kind of touched on all of these. There are a lot of record keepers to choose from, and the record keepers are consolidating at a pretty rapid clip. There's a lot of fee compression out there, probably similar to on the health insurance side. So you are getting lower and lower fees. I mean, it's only beneficial to the participants. You're getting a lot of lower fees, and the websites and the tools and the resources available to employees is so significant. There are so many record keepers out there that do what's called gap analysis. So they'll analyze what you currently make. They'll add in inflation. There are all these algorithms behind the scenes, and they'll say, you're going to need $4,400 a month in retirement based on what you make today and based on, cost of living and all these things. Right now, they'll automatically calculate your Social Security and what you've saved in your 401k plan. If you have old 401k plans, you can kind of enter that information in. You don't have to add it to the plan. And then they'll say, okay, so right now you're set to only have $3,300 a month coming to you based on what you have. And then you can see, okay, if I decide to work until I'm age 65 or 67 instead of 65, what will that do? And you can see in real time, like how that increases what you'll get in retirement. Or if I increase my contribution rate 1%, what does that look like? So the tools and resources are really, they're getting better and better to really give people a clear picture of what they have available to them, what they're going to need, and what everything looks like. In retirement plans, you have something called target date funds. These have become unbelievably popular. They're age-based asset allocation portfolios. So it's considered a fund of funds. So it's one fund with multiple mutual funds in it, and it's targeted to your future date of retirement. They are in 5-year increments, so 2025, it goes all the way up to 2065. For those employees that are in the 2065 fund, that's someone that's not going to retire for another 45 years. That asset allocation is going to be very aggressive. It's going to be mainly equity, very little in cash and bonds, because that's for someone that needs to earn a lot of money on their money and can afford to take risks. However, as you get older and get closer to that targeted date of retirement, your asset allocation is gradually going to get more conservative. So they make it extremely simple for investors, because so many people, they don't join a plan because they just don't understand investments. They don't know the difference between a stock and a bond. And really, you don't have to in order to save for retirement. And target date funds makes it easy. About 80% of all new money is going into target date funds now. So it's trillions of dollars that are going into these target date funds to make it an easy, simple solution, but that also gets more conservative as you get older. Go ahead, Danny. Okay, common problems businesses face. The first one is employees saving enough for retirement. And as I mentioned, it is a real issue, and it will severely impact your bottom line as an employer if you have employees that are hanging on at the end of their career because they just haven't been able to save enough for retirement. And then the other one is reducing your annual tax liability. And that's a real big one, especially for small business owners who want to pay as little in tax as they can. So I'm going to discuss a cash balance plan. It is not very well known. And I will tell you that I am absolutely not a tax expert. So our actuaries put these slides together, but if you have real specific tax questions, I'll defer you to someone else here at CBiz. But so inside of a 401k plan, this includes a retirement plan or a 401k plan and a cash balance plan. Sorry, Danny, go back one. So this slide shows you if you're under age 50, the IRS limit right now for a 401k plan, the max that can go into the plan, which includes your employee contribution and the employer contribution, is $58,000. If you're over age 50, you can put in $64,500. That's the total that can go into a 401k plan. You can see if you have a 401k plan and a cash balance plan, it is so significant, especially as you get in your 50s and 60s, because those people potentially really need to make up for some lost time. You can do, it really tops out at about $200,000 for those in their 60s to be able to defer into their plan. So it's a really great option for you if you are a small business and you make a pretty good profit that you don't want to pay taxes on, and potentially you really need to catch up on your retirement savings. Go to the next one, Danny. So here's an example. A 55-year-old who has set up an S Corp and has no employees. W-2 wages have been $150 a year, and then they have pass-through income of $220,000 a year. Okay, 55 years old, they're making 150 grand. They have a 401k plan just for themselves. They put away the limit, which is $26,000 because they're over the age of 50, and they attach a $9,000 profit sharing contribution on top of that. Then in their cash balance plan, they put in $208,000. So their employer contribution total between the profit sharing and the cash balance is $217,000. So they reduce their pass-through income by $217,000, and they make a pre-tax contribution to their 401k of $26,000, which reduces their taxable income on their W-2. So I will say that a cash balance plan probably is going to be hard to stomach for employers. I mean, it depends. We have employers, with more than 25 employees that are able to do it. But if if it's just two spouses that have a small business that make pretty good profit in your 50s and you haven't really saved for retirement, a cash balance plan is a great option. We go to the next slide, Danny, please. And there's a lot of actuarial work that goes into a cash balance plan. A cash balance plan is kind of a HIP pension plan. It is technically a defined benefit plan, not a defined contribution plan. So here's another example, 2 owners and 8 staff members. And you can kind of see at the top, owner A and B, you can see their age and what they make. This is with them having a 401k plan and then also a cash balance plan. And what they'd owe to their 8 staff members. So this is just saying, it doesn't really matter if the staff defer to the 401k plan. That's great if they do, obviously, but the employer is going to make a profit sharing contribution. And then you can see, based on the age of their staff members, can potentially be a relatively small cash balance contribution into the plan for those staff members versus what the owners can put away for themselves. So you can see that the profit sharing and cash balance together reduces the pass-through income by over $500,000. And the 401k deferral reduces W-2 income of $26,000. And to do all of that, all you have to do is put away in total between profit sharing and cash balance, a little under $36,000 to be contributed to your staff. So I know this is really high level on this cash balance, but there are a lot of really good examples of cash balance plans. And if you're ever interested in looking into one, have an actuary run numbers. They really need to know the age of the employees, but they can show you a really good scenario of what you could have saved in retirement as a small business owner versus the liability that you'll owe to your other employees too. So again, I kind of went through cash balance plans pretty quickly, but it is another good option. And this is really a benefit only for small businesses. Unlike 401k plans, which, you know, all large companies pretty much have to have them. And they're a little bit harder to set up for small businesses just based on some of the non-discrimination testing. Cash balance plan is solely made for small businesses. Danny, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, that's it. So certainly we'd love to take any questions that you have. I know we went through this fairly quickly. Oh, I guess I kind of went over. I apologize for that.
Come on, Sarah.
I know, I'm sorry. I get so excited talking about retirement plans. I will say, and Danny touched on this, but you know, the goal of both Danny's side and mine is, you know, how do you attract top talent? How do you retain top talent? And it is this stuff right here. Retirement plans are kind of the redheaded stepchild to health insurance. Health insurance is just always the much more important benefit when employees are looking at leaving their existing company to come to a different company. But hopefully, as we hear more about Social Security and things like that, people realize what an important benefit retirement plans are as well.
Great. So we did have a couple questions come in. So one of the questions I got about the health insurance was about Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. The example I used was United Healthcare when I was talking about some of the plans and options. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas is a little more conservative when it comes to the options that they offer. So I know a lot of you in Western Kansas and Southern Kansas are with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. So Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas does not really offer one of those level funded plans. Those level funded plans are much less popular with them just because they are a little riskier. And so the options are a little more limited when it comes to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. That's why it's important that you look at other carriers and do an analysis of networks and see if other carriers work, because there are just a few more options with the larger national carriers outside of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. But Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas does have great telehealth options like all the national carriers have. They have mental telehealth options. They have wellness assistance. So again, we work with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas, and we know a lot of you do as well. But that level funded option, while it exists there for small businesses, it's not really a popular option, and it's difficult to get on that platform. Another question was about COVID and kind of the effect COVID had on the overall health system. I would say a couple positives, silver linings, I guess you could say. People got more comfortable with telehealth. Telehealth is a great way for to reduce the overall cost of healthcare. One of the most expensive things about healthcare is the building itself. So the building that you go into to receive healthcare is obviously a cost that is factored into all of those claims. If we as a society, as employees, can increase the amount of telehealth we are doing, it can help reduce the overall cost and really combat those rising costs of healthcare. So COVID got more people familiar with that, more comfortable with that. It made people smarter consumers of healthcare because of that. One of the negative effects that we've seen is some of the delays in claims that we will probably see this year. So people put off getting knee surgeries, people put off getting elective surgeries last year because they didn't want to go into hospitals, and the hospitals weren't taking those types of patients for a while. So those conditions could have gotten worse. That knee could have gotten worse. Different things. Maybe you didn't go in for a cancer screening, and instead of catching it early, it has progressed another year. That could get worse. So there's a delay in claims that a lot of people predict will come this year. So that was definitely a negative of COVID. Sarah, did you get any questions about on the retirement side?
Yeah, so two quick things, and then I know we're at the top of the hour. At what rate should someone be deferring into the plan? So historically, what we've seen and all the numbers that have been run in the industry is that you should be deferring it between 10 and 15% of your current income to really be ready in retirement. So like I said, that one, like our CBIZ employer contribution is 50% up to 6%, which gets a total of 9%. So you're really close to that threshold of between 10 and 15%. But if you think about it, if you don't have a plan at all, you're very far from that 10 to 15%. The other thing is, I know we used to get in the mail statements on what you can reasonably expect from Social Security. Social Security is a whole nother conversation. I do think there will be Social Security for everyone, even if you're 40 years out from retirement. It may look a little different, and no doubt we are all going to be working longer. I think the most recent Social Security item on the table is that now full retirement may not be available until 72, potentially I've heard 75 going through legislation now. So we're all going to be working a lot longer. But if you go to the SSA.gov, Social Security Administration.gov, you can easily pull up your Social Security information since they no longer mail those paper statements. That is it.
And I'd like to add just one thing to that in regard to the Social Security is be sure, in light of everything that has happened during COVID when it comes to identity fraud, to know how to check your Social Security report annually. It's there. It gives you a whole list of all of your earnings from the time you started paying into it. Get in the habit of looking at that and keeping a copy of it. It has been on the rise. So it's not great when your identity has been stolen. And you're having to cover that basis from all aspects. So keep that in mind as well. Danny, Kathy, I want to thank you. I learned a lot in this presentation, and you really supported the knowledge that you provided me in the past. So I'm very grateful and blessed to have been able to work with you guys on a very different aspect, and to be privy to some of the things that you can do for small businesses. Thank you everyone for joining us. As Danny said, we'll be sending out to you a copy of the presentation as well as an evaluation. And if you could return that to us, we would be most grateful. We'd like to continue to build upon your feedback and to hear the next things that you would like to see. Well, everybody have a great week and have a great holiday.
Thank you all. Thanks,
Thanks,
Maria.
Maria.